Make up mind. Fight.
Poison, as a concept, is a super interesting facet of a lot of video games it appears in. What's effectively an extremely vast catch-all term for anything that causes bodily harm to anything else in the real world basically becomes a sort of fifth element in video games, characterized by debuffs, damage over time, and often green gas or purple goo. There were a lot of dedicated poison users in video games, from dot-stacking PvE classes to debuffing PvP nuisances, and in this video, I want to try counting down my top 6 favorite poison users in video games. Why 6? Because it looks better in a YouTube title than 5. That said, let's roll.
I will give you fear such as you've never experienced before. Come into my web.
Street Fighter is a lot of people's go-to example of a classic 1v1 styled fighting game, and because of this, a lot of people's first examples of specific fighting game character archetypes come from this series. Ryu is your Shoto, Zangief is your grappler, Guile is your charge character, etc. Surprisingly though, Street Fighter isn't a series that's dabbled too much in damage over time or poison-based characters. While the Alpha series introduced again a character who loosely uses poison throughout his moveset, Street Fighter V would really run whole hog with the concept through the cunning trickster, Fong. Now, when Fong was first revealed for Street Fighter V, people absolutely hated him. They thought his design was ridiculous, they thought a dedicated dot character was stupid, and they thought he was an all-around silly inclusion, especially as a part of the base roster of a game that didn't even have Guile yet. And as time went on, that didn't really change. Sure, Fong definitely developed some fans, but he's been historically one of the less good characters in the game, and is just not many people's favorites. But me, I think he's absolutely hilarious. A high-ranking Shadaloo member and one of Bison's 4 Heavenly Kings, Fong is a character marked by the extreme discrepancy between his appearance in game and lore. He was kidnapped at a young age by a powerful cartel, and forced to endure lengthy exposure to potent poisons and extreme poverty in an effort to train him into an assassin. He saw every other young candidate around him die, resulting in an extreme will to live. After passing their tests, he became one of the cartel's highest-ranking assassins, to the point that he was eventually shipped off in a squad to assassinate M. Bison. It didn't go too great, leaving Fong the only surviving assassin at Bison's mercy. Bison saw potential in him, however, and took him under his wing as a killer for Shadaloo. He's a genuinely screwed up character, with his hyper dedication to both his own survival and M. Bison making him an exceptionally dangerous fighter, which is saying a lot in the Street Fighter universe. This, contrasted against his goofy, expressive, relentlessly flamboyant mannerisms, make him an unpredictable opponent both in story and gameplay. In the game itself, Fong is a charge character with a focus on applying damage over time debuffs to his opponents through his poison moves. Through his mastery of Poison Hand Kempo, he's capable of applying steady poison debuffs to the entire roster through a wide assortment of different attacks. Doing this, he can rack up a lot of damage quite fast with the right setup, and even if his poison can't deal the finishing blow, all he needs to do is get the opponents on the rope using it for a big finish. His special moves and V-system moves help augment this, with his vast array of different poison attacks making it very difficult for you to keep yourself topped off in a match against him. His V-trigger, Dokonomu, is especially dangerous, as it causes Fong to summon a poisonous cloud around him, making the act of merely standing next to him dangerous. And his critical art, yeah, he just flies, dropping poison along the way, yeah, whatever. And that's not even all he's got. A lot of his normals, due to his erratic movements, can be hard to predict and block accordingly in some situations, so he doesn't always need to poison you to deal serious damage. All of this combined makes him obviously a super unique character in the Street Fighter series, and one that I hope to see a spiritual successor to in SF6. Again, Fong isn't a high-tier character or anything, and he's definitely not well liked by the game's general player base, but for me, I just appreciate his goofiness, his surprisingly ruthless demeanor, and his one-of-a-kind fighting style among Street Fighter's roster. Though I do have to say, he might be Street Fighter's best poison user, but he's not its best poison in general.
I have something that I want to ask you. And you better answer my question truthfully, if you don't want to end up like this.
League of Legends is a game that features, by all accounts, pretty much every character archetype imaginable, both in terms of story and gameplay, sometimes multiple times over. With this vast amount of playable champions comes an extremely diverse set of player terminology, with different bits of lingo being used to denote and describe different situations you'll encounter in the game. However, there is one piece of League's user lingo that every player should familiarize themselves with as soon as possible, otherwise falling victim to one of the game's deadliest traps. Don't chase Singed. Singed, known as the Mad Chemist, is among League's most dangerous and deranged individuals. Hailing from the prosperous city of Piltover, Singed was born with a genius-level intellect and a deep fascination with the natural sciences. Despite performing groundbreaking research for Piltover's university, he was scorned and ridiculed by his contemporaries for the nature of his work and his hatred of hex tech, which he viewed as a crutch and a fad amongst untalented scientists. He was eventually cast out of Piltover and found himself in Zaun, League's smog and crime-soaked undercity. Casting aside most of his inhibitions, he would begin to engage in all sorts of heinous experiments on both himself and others, augmenting his own abilities and using the nature of his fellow Zaunites to procure test subjects for his horrible experiments. Eventually, he was approached by the Kingdom of Noxia, who were seeking a quick means to end their war with Ionia. Singed was granted enough funds to continue his research uninhibited, and this resulted in him casting aside all of his remaining morals and ethics in his research. He would come to produce an alchemical poison that was so horrific and powerful that he and his contractor were almost branded as war criminals. From here, Singed would go on to both directly and indirectly ruin the lives of several of League's champions, from his horrific experiments resulting in the creation of Warwick, to the poisons that he had created causing intense suffering in the lives of Riven, Aurelia, Karma, Master Yi, and others. In terms of gameplay, Singed is a champion marked by his focus on positioning himself in an advantageous manner over his enemies. His passive ability grants him a movement speed bonus whenever he's near another champion, and his primary offensive ability allows him to leave a constant trail of noxious poison behind him that damages foes who attempt to chase him. He can combine these abilities with his skills Fling and Mega Adhesive, which make escaping the range of his poison an uphill battle for opponents. His ultimate sees him use Insanity Potion, which provides him with a huge array of buffs while also massively buffing his already potent poisons. All of this combined has led to the commonly known community meme that we alluded to at the beginning of this section. Don't chase Singed. If you're caught out behind him, you're likely dead. Singed was actually one of the very first champions designed for the game as a whole, and his frequent appearances in both lore, supplementary material, and fellow champion backstories make it clear that he's a favorite among the developers. While his gameplay style and linearity of his abilities might make him an easy champion to snuff out with the right precautions, his insidious nature and ability to ensure death for unaware players make him a favorite of mine personally.
Mix, mix, swirl, mix.
Pokemon is an interesting series to discuss for a video like this, since it does feature a dedicated type for Pokemon who wield it as their preferred form of attacking. Picking a particular Pokemon, though, is kind of difficult, since it's hard to objectively quantify who's the best Poison-type Pokemon without going into personal preference, and even though the literal strongest Pokemon ever created is part Poison-type, it doesn't actually use Poison that much in its moveset. So for this video, we'll focus on a type specialist instead. Poison is one of the more destitute types in terms of main story users, with only 1 in Gen 1, 2 in Gen 2, and not many more until Gens 5, 7, and 8. Luckily, the choice is very obvious for this one. There's only one trainer who could possibly make the list: Fuchsia City's poisonous ninja master, Koga. Koga is one of the more interesting type specialists out of the game's early generations, since he's one of the only generic gym leaders with a somewhat continuing story. He's initially encountered as the 5th gym leader in Kanto's games, utilizing powerful poison-type Pokemon in his battle against the player. He's notable for his extreme level spike compared to the other trainers the player has been fighting up to this point, jumping from the previous gym leader's high 20s to an insane low 40s. His Wheezing specifically is level 43, which is likely to be the biggest number the player has seen up to this point in the game. Depending on the version as well, he may have a team composed entirely of fully evolved Pokemon, which is rare up to this point. While this could be perceived as poor balancing on the designer's part, I like to interpret it as fitting Koga's sneak-attacking ninja character. He sneak-attacks the character with a surprisingly strong team. In the battle itself, Koga's team focuses on a specific stalling strategy that abuses evasiveness and defense-raising moves to keep the player from attacking while their Pokemon's health is slowly whittled down by Toxic. It's a uniquely insidious tactic, especially among the Gen 1 Pokemon game's notoriously linear AI. In Fire Red and Leaf Green specifically, he even rocks 2 Coughings with Self-Destruct, allowing him to use them as literal smoke bombs to instantly down important playmakers on your team. Plus, several of his Pokemon boast the ability Levitate, which allows him to immediately bypass Poison-type's inherent weakness to Ground-type attacks. All in all, Koga boasts a uniquely intricate battle for the point in the game he's encountered at, and an underleveled or unprepared team can easily find themselves outmatched. But that's not where this entry ends, as Koga reappears in the 2nd generation as an Elite Four member. This makes him currently the only gym leader to climb through the ranks between generations, and gives him even more opportunities to show off his strategies. He's still using stalling Toxic strategies with the additions of a spike-setting wall and Fortress, and a hard-hitting sweeper in his new ace Crobat, who's just a pretty strong Pokemon in general. While he's no longer an enormous threat to the player due to them having ample time to prepare going into the Elite Four, he's still a noteworthy addition to Johto's Elite Four, and currently the only Poison-type master master to take a seat in one at all. Plus, and most importantly, he ends up handing the fuchsia gym down to his daughter Janine in between Kanto and Johto, which not only demonstrates a strong familial bond, but also that he's fucked. Overall, Koga's easily my favorite gym leader in the original Pokemon games, and his rise through the ranks going into Johto shows that he was clearly a character worth keeping around. Not a bad start for a notoriously underpowered type like Poison. I hope you guys don't mind, but we're about to take a trip into the anime zone. Hey, if we're allowed to talk about characters from the Batman Arkham games and different licensed games in these videos, then I think an anime licensed game is fair game. Anyways, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is an anime and manga that features an extremely diverse array of powers and abilities thanks to the mysterious force known as stands. These powerful spirits manifest in worthy individuals, offering at least one specific ability unique to each stand user. One stand might allow its user to stop time, another might allow them to manipulate fire, etc. For the purposes of this video though, we'll be discussing a woefully underutilized stand and its horrifying appearances in the world of JoJo and its video games. May I introduce you to Panakata Fugo and his stand, Purple Haze. In the story of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Purple Haze is a stand that's so powerful and dangerous that its user Fugo only ever uses it as a very last resort, and it's only ever actually used once at all in the original JoJo story. At a base, Purple Haze's ability allows it to release capsules on its fist that contain an extremely potent airborne flesh-eating virus. Anyone who's infected with this virus is guaranteed to die within mere seconds, with their bodies being completely consumed and melted into an organic slurry. There's no known antidote, and infection means certain agonizing death. For reference, the one fight that Purple Haze is used in during the original JoJo story is spent with Fugo's allies actively trying to avoid it. The villain who ends up getting killed by it goes from this to this to this in a matter of a few panels. And the really messed up part is that Fugo was one of the good guys. Imagine if he was a villain. But why is all of this important anyway? A virus isn't exactly a poison, after all, unless it is, I'm not really sure. Well, this is because in the PS3 and PS4 fighting game adaptations of JoJo, Fugo appears as a playable character and is every bit as terrifying as he is in the manga. In these games, he appears as a stand user character with the ability to release his homicidal virus onto his enemies. He features a unique capsule mechanic where he's given 6 individual capsules per round that he can break using certain moves to unleash the virus. The capsules can only be restored by using either of Fugo's supers or by starting an entirely new round. In-game, the virus takes the form of a potent poison damage over time cloud that can affect both the enemy and Fugo himself. Should they become infected, the player will find their health decreasing at an alarming rate, with enough potency to take out a significant chunk of their total health bar. In Eyes of Heaven specifically, the poison is capable of cracking the opponent's health bar when they die, a visual effect that's usually reserved for extremely powerful attacks. The poison cloud is also unblockable, meaning that going anywhere near it ensures infection. While the effects of the virus in-game obviously aren't nearly as horrifying as they are in the home series for the sake of balance, that's where Fugo's super comes in. Fugo's Great Heat Attack, or basically his ultimate attack in All-Star Battle, features him willingly biting down on one of his virus capsules in reference to a spin-off light novel known as Purple Haze Feedback, and blowing the virus at his opponent. The screen then enters a black and white hue as the opponent screams in agony while their flesh is dissolved. Finally, Purple Haze takes over and pummels the opponent, speeding up the virus process tenfold. Of course, this isn't an instant kill like it should be, but it's still damn horrifying. Overall, Fugo and his stand are a terrifying combo in any material they appear in, and are a prime example of how to properly adapt seemingly overpowered abilities without compromising either the source material or game balance. Also, remember that villain I showed earlier? Well, in the same spin-off book I referenced a few minutes ago, it said that he came to regret every life decision he ever made during his death at Purple Haze's hands. Purple Haze all in my brain, indeed. One of my most vivid gaming memories from when I was a kid consists of when I returned home from school one day. My older brother told me that he had downloaded a new game on his Xbox and asked if I wanted to play it. That game turned out to be Castle Crashers, a collaborative Newgrounds developed game that was one of the first big breakout indie games of the 2000s. Even though I had no idea what a Newgrounds was as a kid, and I wake up every day thankful for that, I was enthralled by the game's charm, art style, and wide array of playable characters. My brother played as the ice-controlling Blue Knight, my sister the lightning-controlling Red Knight, Knight, and me, our next entry on the list, the poison manipulating Green Knight. The Green Knight has always been my go-to character in my runs of Castle Crashers, especially in solo runs, due primarily to his unique properties compared to the other knights. The Green Knight is the only character in the game who's capable of using poison magic, with each of his spells delivering potent damage over time debuffs to enemies that don't resist them. In solo runs, this can be exceptionally helpful in ticking down the health on enemies the player isn't actively focusing, and can be instrumental to leveling the playing field against large groups of mobs. In a multiplayer run, the Green Knight can assist his teammates by effectively putting enemies on borrowed time, allowing their teammates to stack on damage while the poison slowly chips away at their health. The Green Knight is the closest thing out of the original base knights to a utility character, providing debuffs as an alternative to the other knights' direct damage. In terms of character though, none of the knights in Castle Crashers have much in terms of personality except maybe the Pink Knight, but the Green Knight is notable for being almost always depicted as pissed off and caustic, with his default expression being angrier than every other knight. He was also apparently one of the favorite designs of Dan Paladin, the game's main artist and one of its creators. Neat. What's really funny though is that, as far as high-level Castle Crashers play goes, the Green Knight is actually considered one of the worst characters in the game due to his slower than average combo game and the high number of enemies and bosses that resist his poison. And yeah, well, that can definitely be seen as a hindrance. It really only becomes noticeable at the highest levels of Castle Crashers play, and for my money, the Green Knight is and always will be my go-to pick for the game. Plus, he's not nearly as bad in the game's arena mode, where every character is vulnerable to his poison. He might be considered bottom tier, but the Green Knight will always be top tier in my heart, which probably isn't too great for my health, but whatever. We've discussed a lot of different kinds of characters on this list, from mad chemists to potent magic users to everything in between, but for my money, the number one choice was never in any doubt. A character who's not only the sole evil combatant in this game's roster, but also consistently one of the strongest choices on a competitive level. Apex Legends' own Alexander Maxwell Knox, better known by his new name, Caustic. Caustic is one of Apex Legends' most interesting and unique characters, due primarily to how thoroughly evil he is compared to his fellow legends. While most of the other legends have some degree of goodness and nobility to them, Caustic fights in the Apex game solely as a means of testing his creations on living subjects free of consequence. Born to a well-off family, Caustic grew up spoiled and eventually found work as a pesticide manufacturer. He developed a deep interest in death and suffering, and began creating and testing extremely potent and dangerous corrosive gases on human subjects. When he was found out, he killed his superiors using these gases, burned down the laboratory they were working in, and left behind 2 of his own fingers as an effort to fake his own death. Eventually, he would craft a new identity for himself and enter the Apex games with the intent of testing his gases to their fullest extent. It would later be revealed that Caustic suffered from an incurable form of cancer, and that his efforts to be turned into a simulacrum, basically a cyborg, after his death were rejected, putting him on borrowed time. Despite his truly vile personality, Caustic eventually developed a strong bond with Watson, one of Apex's most innocent and friendly legends, and is said to have softened significantly after this. Despite that, he still revels in death and misery, and values every opportunity he gets to test his gases on living subjects. In terms of gameplay, Caustic is one of Apex's most dangerous and oppressive legends, often appearing mid to high on each season's respective tier lists. He's classified as a defense legend, with his gameplay relying on holding down specific locations and trapping enemies. His primary ability is to set and activate Nox gas traps, releasing a powerful corrosive gas to wreak havoc on his enemies. This gas not only damages and slows down enemy legends while they're standing in it, but also triggers automatically if an enemy steps near it, making it effective for trapping unsuspecting players. This is further augmented by Caustic's passive, which grants him threat vision against enemies within the gas, highlighting them and revealing their location to him. His ultimate ability, Nox Gas Grenade, is exceptionally dangerous, allowing him to toss an on-command burst of Nox Gas that covers a wider range than his traps instantly. This can be devastating against enemies attempting to hold small enclosed areas, and will either force them to reveal themselves or hold their position and suffer the consequences. Caustic also boasts a rare Fortified passive, granting him a passive 15% damage resistance against everything but headshots. This combination of skills makes Caustic an exceptionally dangerous, effective, and powerful trapping and area controlling legend. If you engage a team only to realize that your arena is coated in an enemy Caustic's traps, then you're going to be fighting at a severe disadvantage. Compared to every other character on this list who use their poisons in extremely aggressive, borderline unrealistic ways, Caustic is a character who's truly mastered the destructive potential of his toxins, using them to seal the fates of unsuspecting targets almost like a trapdoor spider. An enemy who knows you're trying to use poison against them can act accordingly, but an enemy caught off guard doesn't stand a chance.
I approve of this new planet. The air is so uncontaminated.
High five!
Thanks for watching. I'm interested in doing more of these top 6 videos in the future, so if you enjoyed, make sure you leave a comment telling me what you liked or disliked about this video, and also suggesting a future topic. Thanks so much, hope you have a fantastic day before, during, and after watching, and I'll catch you all later. Thanks and cheers.